Alright, let's get started marking and installing the grommets. I made a mistake. I didn't baste the waistline with thread on the last fabric piece. If I had done that, marking would have been much faster, but now I have to use the paper pattern to find the line, so a tip for you. Always baste the waistline with thread wherever possible. It makes things much easier. If the fabric allows it, meaning it doesn't show needle marks, it would have been better to baste the waistline with thread on the sixth piece. But if needle marks are visible, then it's better to mark the waistline on the 4 cm seam allowance or the main fabric instead. For the rest of the grommets, the spacing between centers will be 2 and 2.5 centimeters. The first grommet should be 1.5 to 2 centimeters from the top edge and 2-3 centimeters from the bottom edge. But I will adjust this slightly depending on the total numbers of grommets to keep everything even. Alright, let's break this down step by step so it's super clear. So, the first grommet at the top will be placed 1 centimeter and 8 millimeters from the top edge. The waistline grommet will be positioned 14 centimeters below that. So between these 2 points I can fit 7 grommets with 2 cm spacing between the centers. Now for the lower part. The bottom grommet will be 2.5 cm from the bottom edge. The distance between the waistline grommet to the last bottom grommet is 12 centimeters. In this space, I can fit 6 grommets, also with 2 cm spacing between their centers. So, in total, 7 grommets above the waistline, 6 grommets below the waistline, plus 4 grommets on the waist for tightening bunny loops. Don't add too many grommets, as I did on my leather corset. Now it's really difficult to lace up. The more grommets you add, the longer it takes to tighten the corset. And if the spacing is too close, the laces can tangle or make it harder to adjust. So make sure to find the right balance enough grommets for good support and shaping, but not so many that lacing becomes a struggle. We've already marked the garments horizontally. Now we need to determine how far from the edge of the corset they should be placed vertically. Placing the grommets in the center of the top stitching. The top stitching for the garments is 1 centimeter wide. To keep the grommets perfectly centered, the center should be placed 0.5 centimeter from the edge of the top stitching. We marked the grommets the same way on the other side. Now it's time to double check everything. To do this, I fold the corset pieces along the waistline and compare both sides. And I noticed a slight misalignment. That's why it's always a good idea to double check before punching holes. So on the waistline there is no holes, 5 millimeters under, 5 millimeters below. Okay, so now let's punch it. The holes are done. Physically, it's not that easy, but if you have a good hole punch, the process goes much smoother. For example, I have one cheap from Chinese shop and the high quality one. And let me tell you, there is a huge difference. In the future, I'm definitely planning to get a grommet press, which will make things even easier. Another important thing is the fabric. The denser fabric, the easier it is to punch holes. In my case, the fabric was firm enough, so the process wasn't too difficult. And one more important detail. My grommets are 5 millimeters, but I made the holes 4.5 millimeters. Why? Because if the hole is too big, the grommet might not grip the fabric tightly and could become loose over time. By making the hole slightly smaller than the grommet size, the fabric holds it securely, and once the grommet is set, it stays in place much better. What is a grommet made of? A grommet consists of two parts. The grommet, or eyelet, this is the outer ring, the visible part that sits on the front of the fabric. It has a smooth, rounded edge. The backing part. This is the piece that goes on the back side of the fabric. For setting the grommets, I'm using an eyelet setting tool. On my eyelet setting tool, the one side has a slight convex shape. Hope you can see it. So, to set the grommet correctly, I place this convex side of the tool against the backing part of the grommet, like this. So, another part is on the eyelet. When choosing grommets, it's not just about the diameter. The shaft height is also important. Since my fabric isn't very thick, the ideal shaft height is 3-4 millimeters. But it always depends on the thickness of the fabric or leather you use. Once everything is aligned, I squeeze the tool firmly in one motion to secure the grommet. If you press multiple times, the grommet can deform, just like it happened to me. So always try on a piece of the same fabric, not on the corset. And that's it. Our grommets are finally in place. Before we move on, let's quickly go over the most important points to make sure your grommets are perfectly aligned next time. Always mark the waistline. If your fabric allows, best it with the thread to avoid shifting. Double check your grommet spacing. Make sure both sides are symmetrical. Mark the grommet position preciously. Use a fine fabric marker, tailor's chalk, or an owl for pinpoint accuracy. Keep a consistent distance from the edge. Punch the holes carefully. So, do you have your own method for marking and setting grommets? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your tips. Next step coming soon. We've almost finished.